Hello everyone, I'm Ultrasonic Rainboom, and welcome to my very first defense video on G5. If you haven't seen my announcement yet, I am planning to make at least 20 different videos on defending G5 over the next 2 to 3 years, possibly longer, with maybe a few extra videos thrown in there as well, like this one here. A lot of people hate on G5 and say things like it was bad, or it's failed, or it has wasted potential. But in this video series, I plan to show you why all the hate is wrong, and how G5 is actually really already good the way it is, and it doesn't need to be changed, and it should be appreciated more for how good it really is. I'm currently working on a video for why Opaline is a good villain and not a bad villain, as I already mentioned in my announcements. But the script for that video is now 30 pages long, which will probably make the video close to 1 hour and 20 minutes, basically as long as an LP movie. So yeah, this first big video will take a long time to make, definitely over a month until it's done. However, I myself am getting impatient with not having my first video out yet on this video series defending G5, and I also feel bad for you guys to have to make you wait so long until his new video is out, because the first video is so big and will take so long to make. So before I release that opening video, I'm going to do a quick short video on why Twilight is not a villain in G5, and why her taking away magic from Equestria was actually good, and how it fits in with her character in G4. This video is actually a part of the script for the opening video as well, so you'll be seeing all this information once again once that video comes out eventually. So take this as a short preview of the opening video, I guess. But I really thought that this one section that I wrote about Twilight being good really could be its own video, because how Twilight was handled in G5 does get a lot of hate, and it needs to be defended and explained. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here we are, in the courtroom for the case against Twilight Sparkle in G5. Now, the plaintiff, the Bony Phantom, says that Twilight is guilty of being evil in G5. And if you look at how the Phantom used Twilight, it is clear that a lot of people view her as being not accurate to how she was in G4, or claim that she's just straight up evil and villainous in G5.
These crystals are more than just not good, but they are downright evil! These crystals were created by none other than Twilight.
And why would Twilight's best solution to that be so like, yeah, I'm gonna stop you using your magic, I'm gonna force you to get along, and I'm going to reward you by giving you your powers back if you're all friends? That seems like a really odd solution, Twilight. That seems like a not very friendly solution. That seems like a dictator's solution. I'm gonna say that. We really thought maybe you were better than that, but apparently you're not.
We know that Twilight took all of Equestria's magic and placed it inside the Unity Gems to quote-unquote save the world from Opaline. Perhaps the Alicorns of Skyros saw this desperate gambit by the element of magic as a complete and total failure in taking such a route, and then placing her inside this craft, this star, was some sort of punishment.
Twilight had like a decade or two of like actual ruling time, and then Equestria fell. Wow, I bet Celestia and Luna feel pretty dumb for giving up their position.
So directly right after Generation 4, two ponies got into an argument, and Twilight's big brain idea was to take all the magic in the world, essentially, and put it into 3 crystals. The other races then hated this idea and couldn't hang with each other, so then they just went in their own separate ways, and that's how we got here to this generation of My Little Ponies? Holy sh**, this is stupid.
So you want things to be this way? There's like pony disharmony now.
Good.
And pony racism.
Yes. Lovely.
And pony wars.
That's gonna shape some interesting lives.
How could you be so cruel? You're evil. Like, you're actually evil.
This little rat is guilty! Guilty, I say guilty!
So the plaintiff has made the case online through many different YouTube videos by different creators, claiming that Twilight is guilty of being evil in G5. But I'm here to defend Twilight in honor of defending G5, as well as what many other YouTube creators have also done as well. Please feel free to check out the channels in the description. And who is a judge in this court case? Why, it's you! Yes, you! The viewers watching this video right now. You are the judge. Watch me make my case. You have probably already heard the case from the plaintiff on why Twilight is guilty of being evil in G5, or not being accurate how she was in G4. Now it is my turn to make my case on why she is not guilty of being evil, but is the exact opposite. At the end of this video, you, the judge, will make the final judgment call on whether she is guilty or innocent. But for now, allow me to make my case on why the defendant is actually not guilty of being evil, but the plaintiff, the bronies who hate G5, are actually the ones that are guilty of twisting Twilight's character to justify their hate on G5, to view her as evil when she's actually not, but she's actually the opposite in the show. Not everyone who criticizes G5 calls Twilight a villain, but there are a lot of people who criticize her character in G5 in general, and say things like her taking away magic was a mistake, or that it was Twilight being out of character, or a bad decision. But throughout the video, I'll be explaining those aspects of Twilight as well, why what she did is actually good and completely in character for her, looking at all the evidence in G4 itself. So now, let's get into my case. One of the main things I have seen brought up about Twilight in G5, and that I also used to feel while watching Season 9 of G4, is that G5 ruins the ending of G4 because it makes Celestia make the wrong decision in choosing Twilight to rule Equestria in Celestia and Luna's place, as it was after Twilight became a ruler that Equestria fell into chaos, where when Celestia ruled, Equestria was at peace for 1,000 years. So if Celestia could keep the peace for thousands of years, why couldn't Twilight do it for a short amount of time? It must mean that Twilight is a bad ruler, right? It must mean that Celestia made the wrong choice in choosing Twilight to rule Equestria, right? The argument then naturally goes to say that Celestia should have stayed as a ruler, because if she could keep the peace for over 1,000 years, then she probably could have done it for longer than Twilight did, and that Celestia made a mistake in choosing Twilight to rule in her place. As CXCD said,
Twilight had like a decade or two of like actual ruling time, and then Equestria fell. Wow, I bet Celestia and Luna feel pretty dumb for giving up their position.
Now, this can feel like a really compelling argument, and it's honestly what I believed for the longest time, and it made the ending of G4 put a sour taste in my mouth after knowing the events of G5. However, in order to see if Twilight is really handled well in G5, we need to answer this question. Did Celestia make a mistake for choosing Twilight to rule Equestria in her place? Did Celestia make the wrong decision in choosing Twilight? Well, despite Equestria going into disharmony, I'm going to argue that no, Celestia actually didn't make the wrong choice in choosing Twilight. Why? Well, if you look at how Twilight ruled compared to Celestia, there were actually some ways that Twilight did things better than what Celestia ever did, and we'll be talking about that throughout the entire video. But another thing I need to point out is the fact that people seem to act like when Celestia ruled, everything was perfect and always peaceful, but it clearly was not. It was far from perfect. It was not always peaceful. Discord took over Equestria twice. Chrysalis almost ruined Cadence and signing Armor's wedding without Celestia even knowing. King Samba ruled 3 times. Tirek took all Equestria's magic and nearly took over Equestria. Starlight nearly ended the world multiple times. Chrysalis took over Equestria. The Storm King almost ruled Equestria. The Pony of Shadows threatened Equestria. Cozy Glow stole nearly all Equestria's magic for power. And Tirek, Chrysalis, and Cozy Glow all teamed up, destroyed Canterlot, and nearly took over Equestria again. And this all happened during Celestia and Luna's reign. People act like Equestria was perfect and always peaceful when Celestia ruled, but it was not. That is just not the truth at all. People act like Celestia is a perfect ruler and that she always handled everything perfectly, but she wasn't. She didn't. And notice in almost all these examples, the princesses almost never helped in defeating these villains. Half the time, they were helpless and got captured, like when Discord's vines captured the princesses, or when Tempest trapped the princesses, or when Chrysalis defeated Celestia and made her powerless. The only reason why most of these villains were ever defeated was all because of Twilight and her friends. If it wasn't for them, Equestria would have been defeated and thrown into chaos many, many times. And we see this very thing happen in the show when Starlight goes back in time and stops the main six from ever meeting each other. When the main six don't become friends, all the villains they defeated take over Equestria. Even though Celestia is still the ruler in all of these alternate timelines, these villains still take over and overpower Celestia because the main six aren't around, showing how Celestia isn't enough, and that she is not a perfect ruler, and that she can't defeat these villains on her own, but she needs Twilight and her friends to defeat these villains. Because if she was powerful enough to defeat the villains on her own, she would have done it, but she didn't at all in any of these other timelines. Because Twilight is better than Celestia in defending Equestria, because nearly every single defeat of a villain was all because of Twilight and her friends, not Celestia at all. So it makes perfect sense for Celestia to leave Equestria in Twilight's hands, or hooves rather, because she is the real pony who has been saving and protecting Equestria way more than Celestia ever has, for many moons. So Twilight is a good ruler of Equestria, and we see that in how she defeats Opaline. However, some people misunderstand how Twilight defeated Opaline. One of the main things people say about Twilight's character and how she's bad in G5 is they point to Opaline and say that Opaline's pure existence ruins the ending of G4, because why couldn't Twilight defeat this puny villain? Well, most people don't pay enough attention to Make Your Mark to realize that the Opaline that we see in Make Your Mark is not the same Opaline that Twilight fought. It is mentioned time and time again in Make Your Mark that Twilight drained Opaline's power, and that the Opaline we see currently in the show is drained and is now weaker than she was when she fought Twilight.
You were right about magic being in Equestria at the beginning, but most of it came from another pony, who wasn't a pony at all, but an alicorn queen. Her magic was too powerful. They were jealous of her ability and wanted it all for themselves. So the princess stole all the magic from the queen and hid it away somehow. Then the princess put an enchanted invisibubble around Equestria so the powerful alicorn queen could never find the magic or the kingdom of ponies again. The queen was left alone, with only a shadow left of her strength and power. So, do you need anything?
I was doing fine until you ruined my concentration. You know that my power is compromised. It's only a matter of time before I obtain what's powering that Prisbeam magic.
Then we can harness their powers and get your alicorn magic back.
And not only do I not have the dragonfire, but I wasted all my magic showing off my cool plan? I'll just have to wait for my power to replenish.
Put that cape down, so help me. I'm warning you, rodent. If I had my powers, all I need is that dragonfire, and then my powers can finally be restored to their full strength!
It's been hundreds of moons since I've last seen dragonfire. How beautiful it is. Yes! Yes! Power! More! I need more! Then I can finally finish what I started all those moons ago with Twilight Sparkle.
So she used to be much more powerful and stronger than what we see in the show. That is the whole point, and why Opaline keeps telling Misty to get Sparky for his dragonfire, because it is the only thing that can make her powerful again. Because she isn't powerful, and she needs Sparky and dragonfire to become powerful again. That is the whole point of getting Sparky. So when most people say that Opaline is a puny, easy-to-defeat villain, they are missing the point, because she is supposed to be easy to defeat. She is supposed to be weak, because Twilight drained her of her magic. So she isn't powerful anymore, and she isn't powerful as she was when she fought Twilight. But when she fought Twilight, she was much more powerful and much more threatening. It's like when Tirek took over Equestria in Generation 4. When he had every pony's magic, he was powerful and strong and threatening. Just as when Opaline has every pony's magic, she becomes threatening and powerful too. But when he didn't have their magic anymore, he was weak and not as threatening. Just as Opaline was weak after Twilight drained her magic. When most people say that Opaline is a weak villain and that Twilight should have defeated her easily, they think that the version of Opaline that Twilight fought was the same Opaline we see in the show, the weak and drained version, like Tirek when he was weak. When the Opaline that Twilight was up against was actually not that version, but it was a strong version. It was powerful, with Equestria's magic, as Tirek was a powerful threat with Equestria's magic, to the point where Twilight had to surrender to him and to his power. If the Opaline that Twilight fought was the weak one, then yeah, it would be right to get upset at Make Your Mark for making Twilight not be able to defeat a weak villain. But that didn't happen. The writers of G5 knew that was wrong, and they chose not to do that. So you have absolutely no right to hate on Make Your Mark because of this, because they didn't do that. Because the Opaline that Twilight fought was not the weak one, but the powerful one. Just as the Tirek that Twilight fought was the strong one that was hard to defeat, and not the weak one, but the powerful one. And yet, Twilight still defeated her and drained her magic, just like what happened to Tirek in G4, showing that Twilight was more powerful than Opaline, and that Twilight did defeat her. And if anything, the fact that the Opaline is less powerful now should be proof that Twilight is powerful, and that she's more powerful than Opaline, and that she defeated Opaline by taking away her power. So, in total, the Opaline that Twilight fought was way more powerful than the Opaline we see throughout most of Make Your Mark. So it's not at all fair to say things like, why couldn't Twilight defeat this puny, easy-to-defeat villain? When the Opaline throughout Make Your Mark is not the same Opaline that Twilight fought, but she fought a much more different and much more stronger and powerful Opaline than what we see throughout most of the show. Your Honor, people might say Twilight didn't defeat Opaline, but she did. She defeated her by draining her magic. What, did you think that she would kill her? Did you expect that for Opaline to be truly defeated, she would have to be dead? That would not be in character at all for Twilight to do. And if you look at all the other villains in G4, almost none of them were killed, but they were either imprisoned or had their magic and power drained, which is exactly what happens to Opaline. But some people say, but Opaline isn't defeated because she still poses as a threat against Equestria. If she wasn't a threat against Equestria, then she would have been defeated. Because Opaline is still a threat against Equestria, that must mean that Twilight didn't really defeat her, right? Well, what about all the other villains in G4? Most of them were kept alive after their defeat, and most of them were still a threat against Equestria even after they were defeated, and they came back later to do more harm, as Opaline did. But does that mean that the main six never really defeated them the first time around? Are you really going to look at all those villains' defeats in G4 and call their defeats pointless or meaningless, or that they didn't really defeat them at all? No! Just because a villain is still a threat against Equestria after they are defeated, doesn't mean that they weren't really defeated. Opaline might still be a threat against Equestria, but that doesn't mean that Twilight didn't defeat her, because she did defeat Opaline by draining her magic and making her powerless. And if you look at Opaline and Make Your Mark, she is powerless, and she is weak, and that is actually a good thing. People call that a bad thing, make her a bad villain for it, but that actually makes her good. That's actually a good thing for her to have. Why? Why is it good that Opaline is weak? Because it is straight up proof and undeniable evidence that Twilight did 100% defeat Opaline, because she is now powerless and is a lot less threatening than she was when she fought Twilight. If Opaline was still powerful and not a weak villain but a strong villain, then that would prove that Twilight didn't really defeat her. But that didn't happen. The fact is that Opaline is not a powerful, strong villain, but a weak villain. And that is good because it is actually proof that Twilight did defeat her, because Opaline is not as powerful as she was when she fought Twilight. And yes, Opaline does get more powerful throughout Mickey Mark as she gets more Dragon Fire and Cutie Mark magic, which actually makes her a threatening villain and actually a good villain for the main 6 to face. But the fact is that Twilight did defeat her, and her being powerless throughout most of G5 is evidence and proof of that. Now, someone might say, but why didn't Twilight imprison the Opaline? Well, what about Chrysalis? When she was defeated, she wasn't imprisoned at all or captured at all, but she was just thrown to the distance only to come back later as a villain. And when she was defeated again the second time around, Celestia and Luna, you know, the rulers of Equestria at the time, let her roam free and didn't even try to go after her and capture Chrysalis. Chrysalis literally kidnapped all the main powerful ponies in Equestria and basically took over the entire country. But Celestia didn't even try to imprison her, but just let her roam free, only to cause more chaos later. If taking over all of Equestria doesn't make you worthy of being in prison, then I don't know what does. So if you're going to hate on G5 for Twilight not imprisoning Opaline, then you also have to hate on G4 for Celestia not imprisoning Chrysalis. And if anything, what Twilight did to Opaline was actually better than what Celestia did with Chrysalis. When Chrysalis ran away, there was nothing Celestia did to protect Equestria from Chrysalis's return again. No protection spell, no plan, nothing. But with Opaline, Twilight didn't just let her roam free, but she not only drained her magic, making her now powerless, but she also placed a protection spell around Equestria where the ponies were living to protect Equestria from Opaline. And if we also look at the flashback story from Spike that he gives about Opaline, we can clearly see that Twilight placed a smaller invisible bubble around Opaline, trapping her, which shows how Twilight tried to imprison her and trap her. Twilight didn't just let Opaline run free, but she drained her magic, made a barrier protecting Equestria from her, and tried to imprison her. What Twilight did to Opaline in defeating her was actually 3 times better than what Celestia did with Chrysalis, showing us that Celestia actually did make the right decision in choosing Twilight to rule Equestria in her place, because Twilight is better than her in many ways. A lot of people say that Celestia was a better ruler than Twilight, but Celestia wasn't a perfect ruler either. Most of the time, when a world-ending evil villain is taking over, the princesses almost never help, but just leave it to the main 6 to solve all the world's problems by themselves. Now, controversial take, but that isn't always a bad thing, because if the main 6 never faced those hard challenges on their own without any help, then they never would have grown more in character and learned how to face those challenges on their own. Because if every problem was always just solved by the princesses or Discord, then the main 6 would never have learned to grow on their own and overcome the struggles themselves. And Twilight probably never would have learned how to protect Equestria and be a ruler. But in the end, the princesses probably should have helped more at times, especially when it came to world-ending threats. And it was kinda hypocritical that Celestia got mad at Discord for letting Twilight face villains to grow in character, when Celestia has basically done the exact same thing throughout the entire show. It became so common that the show also started to make fun of it.
Stay back, friends! My sister and I will take care of the beast!
All the times we've actually needed their help and they show up for this?
Most of the time, Twilight was the one who defeated the villains, not Celestia. Half of the time, Celestia and Luna were either captured or helpless, or just let the main 6 handle a villain on their own without any help. And when Chrysalis was impersonating Cadence, only Twilight noticed, but not even the ruler of Equestria herself even noticed that Cadence was an imposter, showing how in some ways, Twilight is more aware of dangerous threats than Celestia is, and in turn, is more prepared to handle those threats on her own. As many episodes, like It's About Time, when Twilight knows a dangerous threat is coming, she monitors everything to protect Equestria. And when Twilight ruled Equestria, she already knew how to handle those hard threats, which in some ways made her an even better ruler than Celestia and more prepared to face hard challenges. And I think the writers of G4 knew this as well, as we see in the episode The Beginning of the End, where Celestia first tells Twilight that she and Luna are retiring and want Twilight to take their place. And in this scene, they give their reasoning on why Twilight is fit to be a ruler.
And you want me to take your place?
We can't think of any pony more worthy. Over the years, we've watched you grow. You faced task after task, challenge after challenge.
Countless adversities, yeah, we get it.
And you've always prevailed.
Thank you, but that doesn't mean that we're ready to do what you do.
Oh, of course you are. If the princesses think it's time to retire, we're not a bad choice. We always have Equestria's best interests at heart.
It'll be a bit of an adjustment, but I imagine the transfer of power will be a lengthy process, which will
Actually, we just need a few days to put together a little ceremony.
A few days? But that's so soon! Shouldn't there be some sort of training program that lasts weeks, no, months, if not years?
Everything you've gone through over the years has been a training program.
You're all acting so calm, but this is a big deal. What do we do if something big happens and the princesses aren't there to help?
If you think about it, they literally almost never help. And we still always win! Like when Sombra almost took back the Crystal Empire, or when Chrysalis pretended to be Cadence, or when Tirek came back and absorbed all the magic, or the other time Chrysalis tried to take over, or with Cozy Glow in the school! Am I missing anything?
Pony of Shadows.
Starlight when she was evil.
Discord when he was evil.
Do Flim and Flam count?
See, we've almost always done things without the princess's help. Which makes sense now, because it was all just training for you to take over.
And it worked. I mean, if you think about it, there hasn't been a single villain that we couldn't defeat.
Phew.
And the entire character arc of Twilight throughout Season 9 is her learning to trust in her ability to rule Equestria, to take Celestia and Luna's place. And the fact that Twilight and her friends are always the ones saving Equestria, and not the princesses, is proof that Twilight is capable of being a good ruler, which is strictly what is stated in Season 9, as what I've been saying already with my case. So that is one of many reasons why Twilight is not only a good ruler, but was even a better ruler than Celestia in many ways. And she is totally not evil, unlike what the plaintiff says in this case.
Really, because I'm getting super evil vibes here.
And since we're talking about Twilight, there's something else I need to mention here. A lot of people hate on G5 and say things like it's ruined the ending of G4 because Twilight would never take away magic because of disharmony in Equestria. But it actually makes perfect sense for that to happen, because as we see in Generation 4, it becomes very, very easy for the pony races to turn against each other. The whole history of Equestria is deeply rooted in disharmony between the pony kinds. And while Twilight made a slow friendship to bring harmony to Equestria, we see how easy it was for the other species in Equestria to turn against each other as well. And in the finale of the show, it only takes one day, just one single day, just only a few short hours, for all the pony races to turn against each other again. Time and time again throughout the show, we see how easy it is for the pony kinds to turn against each other. And if that can happen in just one single day, in only a few short hours in G4, then it isn't at all hard to believe that it could happen again over many, many decades and many, many years during the long gap between G4 and G5. And if the pony kinds were hating on each other because of their magic, then it makes perfect sense for Twilight to take action and take away magic from Equestria in an attempt to make them live in harmony again, as Twilight is all about fixing problems and taking action, and it makes perfect sense for her to do that, to try to find a way to fix it. And if you look at the show, we can see how Twilight loves to fix problems. In Applebuck season, she tries to fix the problems that Applejack has caused. In Lesson 0, she becomes so obsessed with fixing a friendship problem that when she can't find one, she resorts to making one herself to fix it. And Lunar Eclipsed, she tries her best to fix the problem of Lunar not being able to adjust to the modern world. In It's About Time, she monitors absolutely everything she can in an attempt to try to stop a problem before it starts. In Make New Friends but Keep Discord, she tries to make sure that Discord doesn't ruin the gala. In Amending Fences, she tries her best to fix relationship problems she has with missing Moon Dancer's party. In The Point of No Return, she tries her best to make up for a mistake of not returning a book from the library. And Between Dark and Dawn, she obsesses over fixing an amulet to control the sun and moon. In every episode with a friendship problem with the map, she tries to fix it. In A Royal Problem, which is literally called Problem in the name, she tries to help Starlight with Celestia and Luna, even though she's technically not supposed to be there because Twilight wasn't called by the map. In the My Little Pony movie, she tries to steal the pole to save Equestria. When there are difficulties in opening the School of Friendship, she does her best to fix these problems at all costs. And in every episode where there's a villain, whether it's Lightning Moon, Discord, Chrysalis, Sombra, Sunset, Tirek, the Dazzling, Starlight, the Pony of Shadows, the Storm King, or Cozy Glow, she always tries to find a way to stop them. And there are also many, many, many other examples from many other episodes I can go to. But I think you get the idea now. Twilight loves to fix problems. It's in her DNA. So it is 110% in character completely for her to try to find a way to fix the problem of disharmony in Equestria, and to save Equestria from Opaline, just as she saved Equestria from all the other villains in the past. That is in character for her completely. You can't say it's not in character because it literally is. If Equestria was in disharmony and Twilight just sat there and did absolutely nothing, that would not be in character one bit for Twilight to do at all. Twilight is a character who takes action, and Twilight is the princess of friendship. And in the show, we see how much she tries to fix friendship problems between friends by finding a way to fix it. And the disharmony in Equestria was one giant friendship problem worldwide, and it is completely in character for her to try to solve it. If Twilight didn't take away the thing that was causing the disharmony, that is magic, then that would actually be out of character for Twilight to do. As the princess of friendship, Twilight is in charge of all the friendships in Equestria, and it is her duty and her responsibility to make sure there's unity in friendships in Equestria, and if there isn't unity, then it is her job to do something about it, to make a way to fix it, because that fits completely within her character and how she was in G4. And it is completely in character for her to try to find a way to solve the problems of Equestria by taking away magic if that is the source of what is causing all the disharmony. But someone might say, but Twilight's plan didn't fix unity in Equestria at all, so her plan failed then, right? It was a bad plan, right? Doesn't that mean that she did the wrong thing?
So directly right after Generation 4, two ponies got into an argument, and Twilight's big brain idea was to take all the magic in the world, essentially, and put it into 3 crystals. The other races then hated this idea and couldn't hang with each other, so then they just went in their own separate ways, and that's how we got here to this generation of My Little Ponies? Holy sh**, this is stupid.
We know that Twilight took all of Equestria's magic and placed it inside the Unity Gems to quote-unquote save the world from Opaline. Perhaps the Alicorns of Skyros saw this desperate gambit by the element of magic as a complete and total failure in taking such a route, and then placing her inside this craft, this star, was some sort of punishment.
You say that her plan failed, but it didn't. As we see in G5, the ponies are united once again, and you can't just ignore that to justify your hate. It might have taken a while, but the unity in Equestria was restored eventually. And sure, for a while there was no unity when the ponies didn't have magic, but there was also no unity when the ponies had magic either. So taking away magic didn't really change anything or make them hate each other more. It is not Twilight's fault if the ponies chose to live in disharmony. She can't force anyone to change. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it. Twilight can lead ponies to live in harmony the best she can as a leader by taking away the thing that was causing the disharmony, which was magic, But if the ponies still chose to live in disharmony after magic was taken away, then that is their choice. Twilight can lead ponies, but she can't force them to change or make them change. It is not her fault if ponies chose to stay divided after magic was gone. It is the ponies' fault for wanting to stay separated, because it was their own choice, not Twilight's. What Twilight did might not have made the ponies united at first, but it did eventually, and in the end, what Twilight did was still the right decision. So as we've seen, what Twilight did to take away magic was not only good, but in character for Twilight to do. But some people try to villainize Twilight and say things like she's just being as bad as Cozy Glow was when she tried to take away magic from Equestria. But the blatantly obvious and clear difference between Cozy Glow and Twilight is the motivation each of them had for doing it. Cozy Glow is evil, Twilight is not. That should be obvious. Cozy Glow tried to take away magic from a motivation of power out of her own pride, while Twilight took away magic from a motivation of harmony and friendship and love to bring the pony kinds together. Also, another important thing to point out is that Twilight's motivation for taking away magic wasn't only to bring harmony back to Equestria again. That was part of it, but it wasn't the only reason why she did it. But it was also to save Equestria from Opaline. Throughout many times in G5, it is clear that Opaline tried to take away all of Equestria's magic for herself, as we see here.
What is the real story of the crystals and Opaline? Who is she really?
She's dangerous. She's the reason I had to part ways with my friends.
Because she wanted the Unity crystals?
No, she wanted magic. All of it. Twilight's reign was peaceful for many moons until Opaline Arcana appeared. She'd been banished from Skyros.
The Alicorn land?
She wanted to rule all ponies. She thought that alicorns were superior, but my friends were strong. Our friendship had created such powerful magic that Opaline had to resort to dark ways to overthrow Equestria. She even attacked the dragons to transform into a fire alicorn. The crystals were created to hide the magic of Equestria in them. All of pony magic and all of dragon magic inside the Dragonstone. Twilight sent us here to protect us and put a spell around Equestria to hide it from Opaline.
Magic is alive, always changing, growing stronger. There are evil forces out there who will want to exploit it. Once a pony tried to steal all the magic in Equestria for herself and almost succeeded. I did all that I could to protect it from by summoning all of my magical strength to achieve placing the magic in the crystals but the spell is broken. You are exposed to the world once again. You must watch out for before she I am with you.
And as we also see in Elderflower's story as well, as she says this.
Now, let's see. My, oh my! This hangar is beautiful. It reminds me of when all these lands were united.
Finally, here we go.
A long time ago, there was a magical bat named Dawn. She was surrounded by other bats like her, but one of the bats refused to get along with the others. This bat wanted to fly around and eat all the fruit for herself. So Dawn spoke to a spider who wove a beautiful web to keep the mean, greedy bat away. In the end, Dawn was able to protect their nest, yet the greedy bat continues to this day to try to break the web. Which is why some bats eat fruit and some bats eat insects.
Now, Elderflower's story might sound weird and strange, but it actually makes sense if you know what she's talking about. The bats represent ponies, and the pony Dawn most likely is meant to be Luster Dawn, Twilight's student at the end of G4, and Elderflower says that there was one bat, which now we know means pony, who was greedy and wanted all the fruit for herself, which is Opaline, and now she wanted all the magic for herself. So Luster Dawn spoke to a spider, who was Twilight, and Twilight made a web to keep Opaline away, which represents the crystals and the Invisibubble protecting Equestria from Opaline. So from Elderflower's story, and from everything else we've seen, it's clear that Twilight stored magic in the crystals, not just to unite Equestria, but also to save it from Opaline. Saving Equestria from a villain is something that a hero does, which is what Twilight did. Twilight is the hero, not the villain. Opaline is the villain, not Twilight. When Opaline was at her full power, she tried to take away all the magic from Equestria for herself by taking Pony's cutie mark magic, similar to how Tirek tried to take away every Pony's magic for himself to gain power. We also see Opaline do this at the end of Make Your Mark. And if we go back to the episode Twilight's Kingdom, after Equestria was taken over by Tirek, what did the princesses decide to do? What does even Twilight agree with?
We must rid ourselves of our magic before Tirek has the chance to steal it from us.
And isn't this the exact same thing that happened in the lore of G5? Opaline tried to take away all of Equestria's magic for herself, just as Tirek did. So Twilight, living like her teacher Celestia, took her advice and rid Equestria of his magic before Opaline was able to take it and gain more power. What Twilight did was good, and it actually fits perfectly with her character and how she was in G4, and it fits with the lore as well. And it is 100% in character for Twilight to try to follow in the footsteps of Celestia and take away magic, as Celestia did when Tirek was taking every Pony's magic. As we see throughout the show many times, how Celestia is like a mentor and teacher for Twilight. Twilight looks up to Celestia, and as Twilight being a ruler of Equestria and a teacher for Starlight, like how Celestia was a ruler of Equestria and a teacher for Twilight, she often compares herself to Celestia and tries to be like her. We see this very clearly in the episode Celestial Advice, when she's debating on how she should treat Starlight as a student by comparing herself to Celestia and how she taught her as a student. So in total, it makes 100% logical sense that Twilight will compare herself to Celestia and take away magic from ponies before Opaline could steal it and gain more power, because that is the exact thing that Celestia did when Tirek was stealing magic from Equestria. Opaline was trying to steal all the magic in Equestria, and she was only getting more and more powerful and more stronger. And Twilight was the protector of Equestria, as well as her friends. And as we see in G4, she always tries to find a way to defeat the villain no matter what. For Twilight to see Opaline gaining more and more power and being more of a threat, like how Tirek and the other villains in G4 were, and for Twilight to see Opaline gain power and do absolutely nothing about it would be 100% out of character for Twilight. Twilight is a pony who takes action, who defeats the villain. So it is 110% in character for Twilight to find a way to defeat the villain by hiding all of Equestria's magic so that Opaline can't get it, as she did in the lore G5, because it was the only way to defeat Opaline, as what Celestia did in G4 of Tirek. Now, Your Honor, some people might still hate on Twilight for doing this. After all, Twilight taking away magic might seem like a desperate call, like a last resort. And you are right. It was a desperate call, it was. But just because it was a desperate call doesn't mean it wasn't the right decision. When the princesses took away magic, it was a desperate call as well. It was something that they didn't want to do, but it's what they had to do for the good of Equestria, as we see here.
There is no doubt that Tirek is after Alicorn magic. With Discord by his side, we will not be able to stop him from taking it.
Once it is in his possession, his power will know no bounds, and all hope will be lost.
But there is one solution. It is only by making this sacrifice that Equestria and the lands beyond it might be saved. We must rid ourselves of our magic before Tirek has the chance to steal it from us.
The princesses made the right call then, just as Twilight is making the right call now. Because being a good leader sometimes means making the hard decisions. As a mod who runs my own Discord server, I know this well. There are times when I have to remove people who are causing drama and causing problems in the server, and I don't want to do that to them. Because some of these people I've had to ban, I've become really close friends with. But for the good of the server, and as a good leader, banning them is what I have to do, even though I don't want to do it all the time. Some people act like Twilight is evil for wanting to take away magic from ponies. They put an evil cartoon mustache on her and act like she wants to take away magic because she is pure evil.
These crystals are more than just not good, but they are downright evil! These crystals were created by none other than Twilight.
And why would Twilight's best solution to that be so like, yeah, I'm going to stop you using your magic, I'm going to force you to get along, and I'm going to reward you by giving you your powers back if you're all friends? That seems like a really odd solution, Twilight. That seems like a not very friendly solution. That seems like a dictator's solution. I'm going to say that. We really thought maybe you were better than that, but apparently you're not.
How could you be so cruel? You're evil! Like, you're actually evil!
Objection! Ha! I always wanted to say that. They call her evil, which is why we're even having this court case. But do you really think that Twilight, who loves magic, and who is the element of magic, and whose cutie mark is magic, would really want it to take away from the world? Do you really think that Twilight would want to take away what makes ponies unique and special? No! Of course not! Taking away magic is not something Twilight would want to do. She didn't want to do it at all. So in a way, when people say that Twilight take away magic is something Twilight would never do, they are half right. Because yes, it's clearly something that she would never want to do, but it's not something that she did because it's what she wanted to do, but it's something she had to do, because as a leader, and to protect Equestria, sometimes the right decision is making the hard decision. Sometimes, as a good leader, you have to do the thing you don't want to do, but it's what you have to do for the good of Equestria. Because just as Celestia and the princesses didn't want to take away magic, but did it for the good of Equestria, Twilight didn't want to take away magic either, but both of them were still the right call to protect Equestria. However, even though what the princesses did was the right call, there was still one thing I've always wondered about, even when I first watched Twilight's Kingdom, when it aired live on TV. What exactly was the princesses' plan to defeat Tirek after they take away their own magic? Take away their own magic so that Tirek can't get it, and then what? How they defeat him? Leave it all in Twilight's hands again, like always? Tirek even makes fun of this when he sees how absurd their plan is, because it leaves them with really no option or no way to defeat Tirek.
Getting rid of your magic so that I cannot take it from you? That was your plan? How does it feel, knowing that soon every Pegasus, unicorn, and earth pony will bow to my will, and that there is nothing you can do to stop it?
What I like is G5 actually does something better than this. Where in G5, Twilight doesn't just take away magic and leave Opaline with her magic and power, as Tirek kept his magic and power after the princesses and every pony else's magic was drained, but she drained Opaline of her magic and took away her power, and on top of that, she also placed a magic spell around Equestria to protect it from Opaline, and she also tried to trap Opaline as well. That is 3 times better than what Celestia did in G4. Even more showing that Twilight was a good leader and a good replacement for Celestia, and that Celestia didn't make the wrong decision in choosing Twilight to rule in her place. Taking away magic was a desperate call, but as we see in G4, Twilight is well known for taking desperate measures to protect Equestria, and if we go to the episode It's About Time, we see that Twilight does absolutely everything she can to protect the world from incoming danger, no matter what it is she has to do, taking every action she needs for the good of Equestria. And in that episode, when she saw no other option to prevent the incoming danger, what did she decide to do to protect the world?
If Tuesday's tomorrow and the disaster happens by Tuesday morning, then there's only one solution. I'll just have to stop time.
Now, stopping time is a really desperate call and a very drastic and crazy thing to do, but it is what she planned to do to protect the world at all costs, no matter what it is she had to do. And in the show, we see how when Twilight protects Equestria, she's willing to take drastic and desperate measures, no matter what it is she has to do, whether it's stopping time, giving up the elements of harmony to the Tree of Harmony, stealing the pearl to save Equestria, being stranded in the human world after Sunset threatened to destroy the portal, or even being willing to give up her own magic.
I'm more than willing to do my part and give up my magic.
And in the episode The Crystal Empire, she is even willing to fail Celestia's test by letting Spike save the Crystal Empire instead of Twilight, when Celestia strictly told her that Twilight needs to be the one to save the Empire to pass the test.
But what if I fail?
You won't. But Twilight, in the end, it must be you and you alone who ultimately assists Princess Cadence and Shining Armor in doing what needs to be done to protect the Empire.
You have to get out of there, Twilight! You have to be the one who brings the Crystal Heart to Princess Cadence. If you don't, you fail Celestia's test!
King Sombra is already attacking the Empire. He could reach the Crystal Ponies at any moment. Reach Princess Cadence, my brother, my friends. There may not be enough time for me to find a way to escape. You have to be the one to bring the Crystal Heart to the fair.
Me? But Twilight, go! Let go!
And when Twilight sees Celestia at the end of the episode, Celestia tells Twilight how good it is that she was willing to do anything she can to protect the Empire at all costs.
It's beautiful.
I wish it had been me who ultimately made it so. But it wasn't.
Twilight, as I understand it, Spike brought Princess Cadence the Crystal Heart because you weren't sure how quickly you could find a way to escape the tower. You weren't willing to risk the future of the citizens of the Crystal Empire in an effort to guarantee your own. Far better that I have a student who understands the meaning of self-sacrifice than one who only looks out for her own best interests.
So Twilight is known for taking drastic measures to save Equestria by doing whatever it is she has to do to protect it, to sacrifice anything she has to do to save the country, whatever it takes. No matter what it is she needs to sacrifice. Whether it's stopping time, giving up the elements, being stranded in another world, stealing the pearl, failing Celestia's test, giving up her magic, or giving up Equestria's magic. No matter what it is, Twilight is perfectly prepared to do whatever it takes to save Equestria. So it is completely in character for Twilight to hide all of Equestria's magic in the crystals if it was the only way to save Equestria from Opaline and to prevent her from stealing all the world's magic to gain more power, as Celestia told the princesses to do when Tirek was stealing all of Equestria's magic. It would actually be out of character for Twilight to not take away magic. In order for Twilight to be in character in G5, taking away magic is something she had to do to be in character. It was the only option. She had to do it for the greater good, as Celestia did, and for her not to do that would be out of character. Bronies say that the writers of G5 don't understand Twilight's character, but it's actually the bronies who criticize G5 that don't understand Twilight's character at all. I went to TrotCon 2025, and there was a Q&A panel with GM Burrow, who is a showrunner for G5, and is basically like the Lauren Faust for G5. And she said how she believes that it makes sense for Twilight's character to remove magic because it was causing division, and to save Equestria from Opaline. She said it makes sense for Twilight to do it because she loves to fix problems. So it makes sense for Twilight's character to do this, to take action and fix the disharmony in Equestria and to save Equestria from Opaline. Unfortunately, I don't have the full clip of this, as I was only able to record half of the panel because of the limited storage on my phone at the time. So the footage I am showing here is from other parts of the panel, where she's not saying that thing about Twilight. But I was there in person, and I promise, she said that it was good and in character for Twilight to take away magic, and it was clear that she never saw Twilight as a villain, or thought that what Twilight did was wrong, or bad, or the wrong decision. But she said that it was good. And I promise she said this: if anyone can find the footage from this TrotCon 2025 Q&A panel with GM Burrow, then you will see it for yourself. Some people act like Twilight is a villain for removing magic, but it is very clear that this was never the intention of the writers. It is only a thing that bronies are putting into the show that was never meant to be there in the first place. The writers never saw Twilight as a villain, but as a hero for saving Equestria from Opaline. and doing the right thing. And if it was never the intention of the writers to make Twilight a villain, then why should we treat her like a villain when she clearly was not meant to be? Some people hate on the writers of G5, acting like they purposely made Twilight the evil villain. But it's clear that that was never the intention. So if the writers didn't make her a villain, then why should we get mad at the writers for absolutely no reason at all when they didn't even make her a villain to begin with? You are getting angry at the writers for no reason. You're getting angry at them for doing something they never even did. They never made Twilight a villain. Period. That is not something they clearly ever intended to do or even did. So it is completely unfair to hate on the writers of G5 for this. So stop viewing Twilight as a villain when she is not. And as we've seen, what Twilight did actually fits within with her character and fits in with the lore of G5. I'm so tired of hearing people trying to villainize Twilight for taking away magic. Some people hate on G5 and say things like, I hate G5 because it makes Twilight the villain. But no, G5 isn't making a Twilight a villain, but you, yes, you my dear viewers, you are the ones making Twilight a villain by trying to villainize what she did, rather than choosing to view the good reasons why she took away magic, and how it fits in with her character and how she was in G4. You are choosing to view Twilight in a negative light as a villain in G5. Not because G5 treats you as a villain, it doesn't, no, but because you just want to justify more hate on G5. And you are ignoring what makes G5 good by being biased to G4, which is completely unfair and just plain wrong. Do you like Twilight as a character? Well, if you actually like Twilight, then why are you hating on Twilight? Why are you hating her in G5 when she's actually a good character in G5 and actually completely in character? Some people say, but I don't like Twilight in G5 because she's out of character. But as we've seen, the hate for that is completely wrong because Twilight is actually completely in character in G5. We could choose to either view Twilight as being a bad character in G5 or a good character. So if you like Twilight, why don't you choose her to be a good character? Why are you trying to make her a bad character when she's not? Because if the evidence points to her being a good character, then why not go where the evidence is going rather than choosing to fight against it and ignore all of it? Some people put the blame on G5 for why they hate Twilight in G5 or view her as a villain. But you can't blame G5 on this because the writers clearly didn't make her a villain at all. G5 isn't making Twilight a villain, you are. So stop blaming G5 for why you view her as a villain. Stop putting the blame on G5 when G5 is not the one to blame at all, one bit. Once again, not everyone who dislikes G5 calls Twilight a straight-up villain, but there still are people who criticize her character in G5 and say that what she did in Take Away Magic was a mistake or a bad move or out of character for Twilight. But, as we've discussed and seen throughout G4 and G5, what Twilight did was not only completely in character, but it was also the right decision, even though it was a hard decision, because as a leader, sometimes doing the right thing is doing the hard thing and leading people to unity, even if they reject it, which isn't Twilight's fault at all, but it's opponent's fault for choosing to be separated. Twilight can't control everyone, it's their own decisions. You can't blame Twilight when it wasn't even her choice. All she did was lead the ponies to unity as the Princess of Friendship in every way she could. What she did was not a mistake or a failure, but it was the right decision even though it was a hard thing. And it did eventually bring Harmony back to Equestria again, and you can't just ignore that. So no, G5 did not make Twilight a villain. But people who hate on G5 make Twilight a villain because they refuse to see why taking away magic was good, even though as we've seen, it fits perfectly with her character. In this case, the plaintiff, the Brony fandom, has called Twilight guilty of being evil, but Twilight has been falsely accused, and the fandom is actually the ones that are guilty of twisting Twilight's character to view her as evil when she is not. I have even seen people using Twilight's negative expressions and making a mark for lazy clickbait videos. They just pause the episode on the screen when she looks angry and think that clickbait image means the character is evil. But no. Just because you pause at a screenshot and make a character look evil in an expression doesn't mean your point is right. What if I made a thumbnail by pausing at a screenshot with Fluttershy looking mad and make a hate video on why Fluttershy is actually evil and a bad character? Would my point be right? Absolutely not. Just because you found a clickbait screenshot doesn't make your point in your video right or true. What? Do you want Twilight to look happy in this scene? Do you want her to say to the main five, "Opaline is coming, watch out," with a happy face, as if Twilight is happy about Opaline and happy that the ponies are in danger? No! If she was happy in this message, then she would truly be evil. But the fact that she looks so concerned in this scene is proof that she cares about them and cares about Equestria, and proof that she loves Equestria and that she takes protecting Equestria very seriously, and proof that she's a good character and a hero and not a villain, as she is warning ponies about the real villain, which is Opaline. And it is completely unfair to call her evil by lazily pausing at a screenshot where she looks angry. Just because you found a clickbait screenshot for your video where the character looks bad doesn't mean your point is right. I am so tired of seeing people using lazy clickbait screenshots to make G5 look bad, like Pip Petals looking upset about G5, when their point in the video is not actually right. What if I paused at a screenshot for G4 and made a video called "Why Friendship is Magic is a Terrible Show"? Would my point be right? No! Just because you found a clickbait screenshot doesn't make your point right at all. Now I know throughout this video, I've been throwing a lot of criticism on G4, and if you're new to my channel, you might think I hate G4, but I don't hate G4. If you watch my videos, I have made a lot of content on why G4 has so much depth, even making a full video for my family on why I'm a brony and why G4 is really a deep and great show with good writing. I don't hate G4 at all. I love G4. But what I hate is how people have used G4 to hate on G5 by comparing G5 to G4, saying that G5 is bad to justify their hate, even though G4 does a lot of the same things as G5 does that they claim is bad, when G4 does the exact same things. So if you're going to criticize and judge G5 in a certain way, and hate G5 in a certain way, then you also have to give the same hate and judgment to G4 as well for doing those same things that you hate on G5 for doing. And if you don't judge G4 the same way you judge G5, then you don't actually hate G5 because it's bad. It's not bad. But you're just making unfair excuses to hate on G5 by being biased to G4, which is completely unfair and just plain wrong. But in reality, I don't want you to hate on G4 at all. I don't want you to hate the backstory of Hearthstorming Eve. I don't want you to hate on Celestia as a ruler. It might not sound like it, but I actually like Celestia. I don't want you to make a hate video on Fluttershy and why she is evil. Please don't make a hate video on Fluttershy F-. But I only say these things because I want to show you how backwards and twisted and wrong people's criticisms of G5 truly are, so that you don't want to criticize G5 that way anymore. Because you don't want to criticize G4 that way. Because if you don't hate on G4 for doing these same things, like having the backstory being the pony kinds hating each other, then why should we hate on G5 for doing the same things that G4 does? We can't treat each generation differently. We can't be biased towards G4 and hate G5 and treat it like garbage, when G4 does many of the same things that G5 does that people claim makes G5 bad, but people give G4 a pass because they are biased. But we have to judge each generation fairly and not have an unfair bias over one another. We shouldn't make unfair comparisons for each generation, but treat them to stand on their own, because G5 actually does. It does stand on its own if you let it stand on its own and stop comparing it to G4 all the time. People compare Spike to Sparky and say Sparky is bad and Spike is better, but just because they are both dragons doesn't mean they should be compared to each other. They are two different characters, and they're good characters for very, very different reasons. And you know what? You're right. Spike is better than Sparky. By far, Spike is way better than Sparky. You are absolutely right about that. No competition there. However, just because Spike is better than Sparky doesn't mean that Sparky is bad. Like, for example, I think most people can agree with me when I say that I like the main 6 more than the CMC, but that doesn't mean that the CMC are bad, right? Both groups of friends are good for very, very different reasons. They shouldn't be compared because they're completely different characters, and they are both good in completely different ways. The same for Sparky and Spike. Just because something is different doesn't mean it's bad. Sparky is good because he complements Hitch's character and gives him a character arc of learning how to be a father, which is good. And Sparky also grows Hitch's character and also helps grow the story and make your mark. We shouldn't make unfair comparisons to G4 and G5 and hate it unfairly, but we need to let G5 stand on its own. And when you do that, you actually find a lot of depth and great good writing in G5. I will also be talking about this much more in the official part 1 in this video series on defending G5, but for now, that is all I will say about this. One thing people have said about the scene with Twilight and G5 is how her design is inconsistent with her look from the last problem, even though this message takes place after that episode. Well, to take more words from GM Burrow, I was at Everfree 2023, and she was asked the exact same question in a Q&A panel, and she said that the reason why Twilight looks like her more normal self and not her last problem self was purely a Hasbro decision alone and not a writing decision. Hasbro wanted Twilight to look like her normal self for marketing reasons, because her normal design is a lot more recognizable and iconic to most people, compared to her design from the show's last episode that only appeared in one single episode. There were also many fans who only watched the first few seasons of G4 and never saw the later seasons or the ending of the show, and giving Twilight her design from the ending of the show wanted to draw in the older fans who never knew that she had a design change at the end of the show. And most kids watching might not even be familiar with the last problem as much as most bronies are. And it makes perfect sense why Hasbro would want to use Twilight's more iconic and recognizable design for the general public, and to use her design that appeared in over 200 episodes that can easily be recognized by the general public, rather than using a design that's only from one episode that a lot of older fans who only watched the first few seasons might not even be familiar with. This also makes sense from an animation perspective as well. 3D animation is hard, and it takes a lot to design a new body and character for a 3D model. Because in 3D, you have to design in 3 dimensions, where in 2D, you only need to design in 2 dimensions, which is much easier in comparison. In 2D, you only need to draw a character from one single perspective, which isn't that hard, but in 3D, you need to design a character from literally every perspective possible, which is a lot more work in comparison. Designing a whole new body structure just for a character that would only show up for one short scene is a lot of work and wouldn't make sense for such a small scene. It makes more sense that the animators will just reuse the same body structure for Twilight as most male ponies and Make Your Mark have. As amazing as it would have been to have Twilight look lore accurate in this scene, from a perspective of an animator, it makes sense why they did what they did and just reused a body structure that they already had made for such a short scene, rather than designing a whole new body structure for a character that was only meant to be shown for only a minute on screen. It makes sense for the animators to design new body structures for bigger characters, like the dragons or Laura, because they appear in many episodes and are main parts to the story, and share a lot of screen time and focus. But it makes less sense to do that for a character that was only made to be in one small scene. But in the end, It was a decision made by Hasbro to make Twilight more recognizable for the general public, to be recognized by the most amount of people as possible, to gain as many views on Mickey Mouse as possible from all those G4 fans. So in total, from a marketing view, it makes perfect sense why Hasbro would want Twilight to keep her more recognizable look in this scene. But yeah, it doesn't make sense from a lore perspective. And just so you know, GM Burrow in this panel, she said that she fought for Twilight to have for her last problem design in G5. The writers of G5 wanted Twilight to look lore accurate in how she was in the last problem episode. But Hasbro overrided their decision. So don't blame the writers of G5 for this. Blame Hasbro. But at least Twilight kept her last problem design and her return to Tell You Tale, but that sadly happened at the very last animatic that was leaked from the show, right when the show ended, so you may never know what would have happened after Twilight returned. And in that episode, the episode The Greatest Gift Ever, it was shown that Twilight was the Wishing Time store the entire time. This drastically changes how you watch the Winter Wish Day episodes, knowing that Twilight was trapped in the store the entire time. But still, Twilight being trapped inside the Wishing Time store explains a lot. A lot of fans can criticize Twilight in G5 and say things like, why did Twilight leave the main fight to handle Opaline on their own?
She then tells them, hey, better watch out for the villain, cause she's coming for ya, and then disappears into the crystals. And I'm sitting there saying, what? No! Are you seriously telling me that you failed to stop this villain, and so now you are pawning off the responsibility to some random group of ponies in the future, and just hope that they can handle it?
Why didn't she help at all? Well, we see now why, because she was trapped in the star. We don't know how or why it happened. It might have been explained in a future Tell You 2 episode after Twilight returned, but that is all cancelled now, and we may never know what would have happened to Twilight and how she got in there. But don't blame G5 for this. They obviously weren't giving a chance to explain this. Blame Hasbro for cancelling G5. Don't blame the G5 writers or G5 itself. Blame Hasbro, the greedy corporation who cancelled this amazing show because it wasn't making as much money as they wanted it to make. And they didn't care at all about the amazing story it was trying to tell with Allura and Otoro. But in a way, I think Twilight not being able to help the main 5, which later became the main 6, and letting them handle Opaline on their own, is actually somewhat poetic, because that is what Celestia did to Twilight most of the time in G4. Of course, we see now that Twilight had no choice in this matter, as she was trapped inside the star and couldn't help at all, even if she wanted to. But I think Twilight trusting in the G5 main 6 to defeat Opaline on their own was good, because it shows that the magic of friendship leads to other friendships in other generations. And in G4, the main 6 wasn't always the ones who defeat the villains at the end, but Starlight, Trixie, Discord, and Thorax defeated Chrysalis, and the Student 6 defeated Cozy Glow. And in the Cutie map, all the townspeople in Starlight's town were the ones that went after Starlight, because the main 6 didn't have the cutie marks anymore, and were unable to help to defeat Starlight, and they just had to trust in these strangers that they didn't even know to defeat her. And Twilight seeing this made her trust in other friendships and relationships as well, to live out the legacy of the main 6 in saving Equestria. And this is going more into theory or speculation here, but in a Tell You Tale episode, we see a blanket that is super old and made decades ago, but it showed the main 5 long before they were friends, as a prophecy of their friendship. So I think that Twilight somehow knew the main 5 were going to come years from now to restore magic, which is why she recorded that message for them, which appeared in the Bright House. And since the Bright House works pretty similar to the Tree of Harmony, as they were both alive and can control their own environment, as we see what the Tree of Harmony does to the Student 6, just like how the Bright House can make a magic room for Misty, or create a chocolate fountain, or make things levitate, similarly to how the Tree of Harmony was able to make that treehouse for the Student 6, or to show them their greatest fears. So they must be connected in some way because both the Tree of Harmony and the Crystal Bright House are very similar, and they are both connected to the main 6 of their own generation, which is probably how Twilight was able to record the message. And the G5 main 6 also have their own elements of harmony as well.
I'm a princess of a different kind, always trying to figure out why. When my cutie mark comes to life, I blast bravely across the sky.
I sparkle like the stars because I'm always super glittery. My cutie mark comes to life. Watch this brilliant creativity.
I'm a stylish pop star princess. My voice makes me strong. When my cutie mark comes to life, confidence is my song.
I might seem a little quiet, but my strength is very real. When my cutie mark comes to life, my heart helps me feel.
I'm the pony of the law, coolest dragon dad you know. My cutie mark comes to life, and my kindness overflows.
I am all 3 pony kinds, wrapped up into one. My cutie mark comes to life with hope bright as the sun.
Which of course resemble the main 6's elements of harmony. And just because they had different elements or different names, doesn't mean they aren't connected or aren't the same. Because we see this very same thing happen in G4 with the Pillars of Equestria, as they also are a form of the elements of harmony.
You know, the sparkly crystal things that grow from the Tree of Harmony and represent each of us? Laughter, honesty, generosity, loyalty, kindness, and magic.
They are reflections of our own elements of hope, strength, beauty, bravery, healing, and sorcery.
Just as the G4 main 6's elements were a reflection of the Pillars of Equestria's elements, so the G5 main 6's elements are a reflection of the G4 elements, which makes them connected to the Tree of Harmony together, which transformed into the Crystal Bright House most likely. And after the Tree of Harmony was thought to be dead, we see that it is still alive, and it shifts and changes into something new, as shown here.
The tree has always been good at surprises. When Star Swirl planted the tree seed, he didn't even know what it would grow into. I guess the tree is still alive, changing and adapting to be whatever Equestria needs.
A cool place to hang out?
Something tells me this is more than that. It seems the elements of harmony may still be with us in their own way. Like all living things, I change as I grow. As I have grown, so have my abilities.
And Twilight also said something similar in her message in the Crystal Bright House.
Magic is alive, always changing, growing stronger.
So the Tree of Harmony is known to grow and change over time and be whatever Equestria needs it to be, like the Crystal Bright House for the new elements of harmony, the new main 6. And this connection that they shared might have been what made the blanket in the first place, and how the prophecy of the main 5 was made, and why it seems like Twilight somehow expected the main 5 to come to watch the recording and trusted that they would defeat Opaline together because they had the magic of friendship and had the same power that the G4 main 6 had. I know I'm kind of rambling and speculating a little bit here and theorizing, but as Larry Boy once said,
they're all connected.
It's all connected. It all makes sense. And even though Twilight couldn't help the G5 main 6 defeat Opaline, she trusted that they had the power to defeat Opaline through the magic of a friendship, which is a very wise thing for Twilight to do, and even fits with her character and how she defeats the villains by the magic of friendship, even if it isn't always with her friends. As we see in the episode School Race or To Where I'm Back Again, or the Cutie Map, with other friendships defeating the villains besides the main 6. Now, there's a lot more I want to say here about how everything is connected to the Tree of Harmony. From the Student 6, the crystals, the magic of friendship, the elements, and everything. But I think that could be a whole separate video on its own. So if you guys are interested in hearing more about that, I can do a deep dive on it, and it will hopefully be shorter than this video here. Now, there's one more thing I need to add here, and it kind of changes things a bit. So we talked a lot about the crystals and how they worked. But there is one key detail that I've left out so far that is included in the comics. And in the G5 comics, it is said that after Twilight made the 3 crystals, it only stored the pony's magic inside of them, but it didn't take away their magic at all, at least not right away. the ponies could still use their magic as long as they got together and didn't divide, as the comic says. To make sure magic never again pitted unicorns, Pegasi, and Earth ponies against one another, Twilight gathered all the world's magic and placed it in 3 crystals. As long as these 3 crystals were protected and all pony kind lived in harmony, magic would be kept alive and well in Equestria. So the crystals didn't outright remove magic at first.
Well, that changes things.
But now, this might seem like a contradiction to what we've been saying and what we see in Make Your Mark about how Twilight removed magic. And at first, I thought that this was a contradiction to the show as well. After all, the comics are known for adding elements and things that were never in the main show. The G4 comics add so many characters and things and places that were never mentioned or part of the main show at all. So at first, I thought that this was just the comics doing its own thing, and the comics being the comics. But what if I told you that this actually doesn't contradict the show at all, but it actually explains it better? Once again, from how the crystals work in the comics, it says that as long as the ponies lived in harmony, they would keep their magic. But if they choose to live divided and lived in disharmony, then they would lose their magic, which, as we know, ended up happening. So even though they didn't lose their magic right away, what Twilight did still ended up taking away Pony's magic in the end. So it can still be said that Twilight took away the ponies' magic, because that's what ended up happening in the show after the ponies chose to stay in disharmony. And the main series actually proves this point to be true as well, and supports what the comic says about how the crystals actually work. First, let's go back to New Generation, to the movie, which shows how the crystals work the exact same way as they do in the comics. In the comics, the only reason why the magic was ever lost in the first place was only because the ponies chose to live in disharmony, as the comics said that the crystals will keep magic to the ponies as long as they lived in harmony, but if they don't live in harmony, the magic would be gone. This then clearly implies that in order to bring magic back to Equestria again, all the ponies need to do is live in harmony with each other, and if they did that, then the magic would be restored. And as we see in the movie, that is exactly what happened, as Sunny says this.
I understand now. It's not the crystals that need to be brought together. It's us. We can bring back everything that was lost, but it's up to us. We can stay separated by fear and distrust, or we can choose friendship. We can choose love. That's the true magic.
And after the ponies chose to live in harmony again, magic was restored, which shows how the only reason why they lost magic in the first place was not because their magic was trapped inside the crystals, but only because they chose to live in disharmony, which is exactly how the crystals are said to work in the comics. And in the deleted scene from the movie, we see a flashback of Sunny's childhood, where Argyle says how magic is going to disappear, as he says here.
It will happen soon. Our stone will die, and we'll have no magic left.
It's clear that in this early development of the movie, the ponies were going to have their magic in the flashback scenes during Sunny's childhood. As Argyle says, the stone is going to lose magic, referring to the Earth Pony crystal, which then clearly implies that when the movie goes into the present day, magic will be gone like we see in the movie. Why would it be gone? Because ponies started to hate each other more and more and become more separated, and therefore lose their magic as a result, which is exactly what happens in the comics and how the crystals work. So it is clear that even from very early development of the movie, the writers have the same understanding of the crystals as the comics did. Episode 1 of Make Your Mark also proves this point to be true as well. When the ponies started to live in disharmony again, it started to make them lose their magic again, which is what it said would happen in the comics. And if harmony is kept alive in Equestria, magic will be kept alive as well, which is exactly how the crystals are set to work in the comics. But what about Opaline? Does this contradict what we talked about earlier? About how Twilight took away magic to hide it from Opaline to save Equestria? Actually, no. It doesn't contradict that either. How? Well, first, let's go to another part and make a mark that proves how the crystals work and how they do in the comics. When Sunny says that magic was gone, Spike sounds surprised.
The spell was damaged when we brought magic back, when the three pony kinds reunited again after centuries.
You lost magic? All by yourselves?
Spike clearly didn't know that magic was ever lost because he was asleep. But as we see in the comics, he was still awake and well when Twilight created the crystals, meaning that when Twilight put Equestria's magic inside the crystals, it didn't take away the ponies' magic, but only hid their magic inside the crystals. And the ponies could still use magic as long as they stayed in harmony together, meaning that when Spike fell into his long dragon sleep, the ponies were still in harmony and magic was still around. But how does this explain Opaline and how Twilight saved Equestria from her? Well, as we see in Spike's story and how Twilight created the crystals, Spike says that Twilight quote-unquote hid Equestria's magic inside the crystals so that Opaline couldn't get it. This then would mean that the ponies could still use their magic if they were in harmony, but Opaline couldn't take away their magic even if the ponies could still use it. So at first, it might seem like the comics contradict the show and how the crystals work, but it actually perfectly complements the show and explains it better. And the show Bible for G5 actually explains this well too. It talks about how Twilight made the crystals to save Equestria from Opaline and to restore harmony to Equestria. As long as harmony is kept alive, the ponies could keep using their magic, as is what is said in the comics. As the show Bible says it here. During Princess Twilight's 200 moon reign, Equestria faced its biggest threat yet, a supervillain who planned to take away all the ponies' magic and use it against them. The evil alicorn named Opaline was determined to win, take over the kingdom, and rule as she saw fit. It was Opaline who would stop at nothing to make sure that the citizens of Equestria were stripped of their special magic, and she began to try, using her incredible alicorn powers to lure and trap ponies and leech them from their abilities. After moons of unrest, Twilight Sparkle and her trusted friends, Rainbow Dash, Pinkie Pie, Rarity, Applejack, and Fluttershy, were finally able to free the trapped ponies, defeat Opaline, and restore magic to the world. So here, we can clearly see that the main six and Twilight defeated Opaline, drained her magic, and restored the magic back to the ponies, which is the exact same thing that happens to Tirek in G4. Some people might get mad at G5 and say that Twilight and her friends didn't defeat Opaline, but they did! The show tells us this many times, and the show Bible tells us this as well. If the main six didn't defeat Opaline, then you also have to say that the main six didn't defeat Tirek at all, because he was defeated in the exact same way as Opaline was, and he was still a threat to Equestria and still came back and caused chaos just as Opaline did. So if you say the main six didn't defeat Opaline, then you also have to say the main six didn't defeat Tirek either. But some people criticize Opaline for being similar to Tirek, as the plaintiff says here.
Which somehow out of the blue causes Twilight Sparkle to just appear before them in a hologram. And this is by far the worst part of the entire series, if you ask me. She then explains that she put all of the magic in Equestria in these crystals in order to keep Opaline from stealing the magic. Yes, it is the same motivation they gave the Tirek and the Storm King, because the show is incredibly uninspired and not unique in any way.
What's wrong with Opaline being defeated similarly to Tirek? G4 took elements from previous generations many times. But that doesn't mean that G4 is unoriginal, right? No, because it makes something new out of those old elements and characters. The same goes with G5. Even though Opaline is similar to Tirek in some ways, as we've already shown, she's also still a very different character than Tirek completely, and she's her own character, and she's actually one of the most unique and, dare I say, even interesting villains in all of My Little Pony. And I'll be talking about her a lot more when I do a full video on Opaline separately. So just because G5 takes elements from G4 doesn't give you a right to hate on G5 at all, or call it quote-unquote unoriginal, or uninspired and not unique in any way, because G4 did the exact same thing with taking elements from previous generations, but no one gets mad at that or calls G4 unoriginal. Because if you don't call G4 uninspired or not unique in any way for taking elements from the previous generations, then why should we get mad at G5 for doing the very same thing that G4 does? Because if you are going to get mad at G5 for this, then you also have to get mad at G4 for doing the same thing as well. It seems like people can make up any excuse they want to hate on G5, but a lot of the hate is completely unfair, biased, and wrong. And if anything, it should make even more sense for G5 to call back to things from G4, because it is a direct sequel that takes place in the same universe. So it makes sense for G5 to call back to G4 so much because it is within the same continuity. Anyway, after that little bit of a detour, let's get back on track on seeing what the show Bible says about this. After moons of unrest, Twilight Sparkle and her trusted friends, Rainbow Dash, Pinkie Pie, Rarity, Applejack, and Fluttershy were finally able to free the trapped ponies, defeat Opaline, and restore magic to the world. To make sure that all the magic never again fell into the wrong hooves, Twilight Sparkle made a difficult decision. She performed a complicated and dangerous spell, gathering all the worlds of magic and placing it into 3 crystals. As an extra layer of protection, Twilight added a cloaking spell, placing the 3 lands in an incredibly strong Invisibubble enchantment so that they would be hidden away from the outside world. This way, Opaline can never find them again. Inside this hidden realm, the ponies would meet every year with the precious crystals for the Unity Festival, a grand celebration of friendship that reunited the main 6, just like in the episode The Last Problem, and recharged the magic the crystals contained. As long as friendship was kept alive, magic would be as well, as was also said in the comics. And if you go back to New Generation movie, we see the stained glass window with the Unity crystals, and Zip says this about the window.
This is what I wanted to show you. Oh my stars. This was made a long time ago, when we still had magic.
So from the movie, we can clearly see that the crystals were around during a time when ponies still had magic, once again supporting what the comics and the show Bible says about the crystals. And when Elderflower sees the same window, she says this.
My, oh my! This hangar is beautiful! It reminds me of when all these lands were united!
Which once again supports the idea that the crystals were first made back when there was still unity and magic in Equestria. So from the show Bible, it is clear that the writers knew how the crystals were going to work from the start. And how they work in the show Bible is exactly how they're said to work in the comics. Which means that the comics cannot contradict the show because it is how the crystals were meant to work from the very beginning throughout the entire series. And as we've discussed, it doesn't contradict the show at all, but it only supports it even more. Now, there's one G5 comic that fans have pointed out that contradicts how the crystals are said to work, as said by the YouTuber MV. In the Storm of Zephyr Heights comic, Rainbow Dash says how Twilight is stealing all of Equestria's magic in the crystals, and Rainbow Dash is sad that she won't be able to fly anymore, as it says here. Twilight is stealing all the magic today, which means I'm gonna lose my flight, and I don't know how I can live with that. It's not just magic for me, it's freedom, it's who I am, it's my home here in Cloudsdale, it's my life as a Wonderbolt. What does it mean to be a Pegasus if your wings don't work? We don't know what will happen to Cloudsdale when the magic goes away, but I do know that someday the magic will be back. So I'm recording this message for the next Pegasi who can fly, the next Pegasi who can find this city, this museum. Now, does this contradict how the crystals are set to work in the comics? Well, at first, it kinda may seem like it, because the crystals didn't take away magic right away, but only after the ponies were in Disharmony. However, there's also a way to look at it where it doesn't contradict how the crystals work at all, because from the Discord comic, the crystals will take away magic when the pony kinds are separated and not in harmony with each other. And since the pony kinds were already in disharmony at the time when Twilight was making the crystals, I think it's safe for Rainbow Dash to assume that it wouldn't be too long before the magic goes away because the pony kinds were already in disharmony. And in this scene, Rainbow Dash also says that she's recording a message for the next Pegasi who can fly because she knows magic will return. But how? How does she know magic will return? Because that is how the crystals work. Because if ponies become united again, then magic will be restored, as that's how they work in the comics and the show itself. So while it may seem like this scene contradicts how the crystals are set to work in the comics, you can actually look at it in a way that it doesn't contradict that at all, but only supports it once again. And if you go back to that comic one more time, we can see that it is opening to start the ponies hating each other. Now, I've heard some people in the jury criticize this, as shown here.
How on Earth, or how in Equestria, did this random unicorn pony manage to make these ponies hate each other when previously their relations were absolutely fine? That's my question. We know ponies don't really live forever, or even that long at all, so it didn't take very long from the episodes we see in Friendship's Magic, where all the ponies are literally fine together, they don't even think anything of it, to actually hating each other. So I really don't know what influence this unicorn had. Now, of course, it is implied that this unicorn is this same alicorn we see at the end of the cartoon special, but ultimately, regardless of where she comes from in this continuity, how could any one pony have such influence over others that she makes them hate each other?
How could one pony cause that much disharmony? Well, Chrysalis did it, didn't she? Chrysalis literally does the exact same thing that Opaline does in the comics. And in G4, it's even worse, because Chrysalis spreads rumors, and in just one single day, the ponies turn against each other. Where in G5, it happened over many moons, and most likely, possibly even over many years. No one gets mad at G4 for doing this, yet people get mad at G5 for doing this? When G4 actually makes it a lot less believable, with spreading disharmony in only one day in such a short amount of time, where G5 actually makes it better and way more believable? Why should G4 get a pass when G5 doesn't, even though G5 did it better? To hate on G5 for this, when G5 actually does it better than G4, is completely unfair and just plain wrong. And it shows how biased people are to G4, when G4 does things worse than G5 at times. Now, I know in G4 the villains were spreading disharmony over multiple episodes, starting from the Summer Sun setback to the ending of the end, as shown here.
You know, it really was super easy to get all those Earth ponies and Pegasi and unicorns to turn on each other.
It was, wasn't it? Now that is something to think about.
Hey there, my unicorn friend.
Have you heard?
About the Earth ponies. They're hoarding the food for themselves. I heard the mayor of Appaloosa say that if unicorns and Pegasi want to eat, they can use their own hooves to dig.
How awful!
We unicorns have to stick together, right?
Ah, Chrysalis. Another successful field trip, I presume?
Spreading distrust among the unicorns and Earth ponies is almost too easy.
Didn't you all notice something was wrong in Equestria? We've been busy.
A whisper here, a rumor there.
Destroy some crops, cause some damage.
Turn pony against pony.
Until your whole kingdom is on edge, waiting for just one tiny thing to push them over the brink.
However, even though it went through multiple episodes, it really only got seriously bad in one single day, as the main six, the princesses, and all the main characters didn't notice the chaos until it got really bad, and ponies seemed to be separated in just one single day, when the rest of the episodes didn't have much separation. When G5 did it over a longer period of time, through many years, more than just a few episodes, between the long separation gap between G4 and G5, making it much more believable and likely. So no, it's not all fair to hate on G5 for this, when G5 actually does it better than G4. When it comes to this, G5 is actually better than G4. That's why I said it, because in the end, G4 did the exact same thing. So if you're gonna hate on G5 for this, then you also have to hate on G4 as well. A lot of people say that G5 ruined the ending of G4, but in the end, G5 didn't ruin the ending of G4, because the pony races didn't stay against each other. The pony kinds didn't stay hating each other in G5. Magic was restored, but not just magic, but harmony was restored, as it was only when the tribes were united and in harmony that the magic returned. Equestria might have lost its magic for a time, but what we need to focus on and point out is that it didn't stay that way. Magic did come back. The pony kinds did live in harmony again. The pony kinds do live in harmony in G5. Some people hate on G5 and say things like, it ruins the ending of G4 because it makes the pony kinds hate each other. But, as we've seen in G4, the pony kinds turning against each other is not at all a surprising thing to happen again, because the pony kinds literally turn against each other in G4 in just one day, over just a few hours, in one episode. Bronies hate on G5's lore, treating it as if G5 made the pony kinds hate each other forever, completely ignoring the fact that the harmony in Equestria was restored and that ponies in G5 do live in harmony with each other. But people hate on G5 anyway in order to justify hate on G5, even though it's unfair and just plain wrong. The ponies didn't stay separated, and you can't just ignore that to justify your hate. They do live in harmony in G5, just as they did live in harmony in G4, and it is completely unfair to only focus on the fact that the ponies once lived in hatred and completely ignore the fact that over 99% of G5's runtime was spent with the pony kinds living in harmony together, the same as G4 was, when only less than 1% of G5 is actually spent with the pony kinds hating each other. It is completely unfair to focus on less than 1% of G5's runtime and how the pony kinds are separated, and ignore 99% of G5's runtime where the ponies are united, just because you want to justify more hate on G5. People hate on G5 for having the lore being the ponies hating each other, but G4 did the exact same thing in their lore of the show as well. But no one hates on that because they are biased towards G4 and want to justify their hate on G5, which is completely unfair and wrong. So if you hate on G5 for having the lore being the pony kinds hating each other, then you also have to give the same hate to G4 for doing the exact same thing in their lore as well. You can't be biased and hate on one generation when the other generation does the exact same thing. If you are going to treat G5 in a certain way and judge it in a certain way, then you also have to give the same treatment and judgment to G4 as well. And if you don't treat G5 the same way as you treat G4, then you're just being biased and not hating on G5 because it's actually bad, but because you're making unfair excuses to hate on it, even though G4 does many of the same things. And if anything, G5 only shows that the magic of friendship still wins in the end, even if it isn't through the G4 main 6, and that the magic of friendship is through the generations and through the ages, as the Equestria Girl song says, and that the magic of friendship lasts to other friendships and other friend groups, which is exactly how G4 ended, with showing Luster Dawn leave with a new cast of characters, a new main 6, unintentionally representing the G5 main 6, the next generation of ponies. So no, G5 didn't ruin the ending of G4 at all, but it only promotes and shouts the message that the show was already trying to tell, that friendship wins in the end because harmony was restored to Equestria. The pony kinds do live in harmony in G5, as they do in G4, and nearly 100% of G5 is spent with the ponies living in harmony, as with G4. So all that is why G5 did not make Twilight a villain, and why it was actually good for Twilight to take away magic to save Equestria, and why Twilight taking away magic didn't ruin the ending of G4, but it only promotes G4's message of friendship even more. So now here we are. I have finished making my case on how Twilight is not guilty of being a villain in G5 at all, but the fandom is guilty of twisting her character to justify more hate on G5. People call Twilight a villain and call her guilty of being a villain. But in reality, G5 is not making Twilight a villain. You are. So stop making her a villain and view her as the way she's meant to be viewed, as a hero who saved Equestria from Opaline and brought unity to Equestria, which did end up happening, and you can't ignore that to justify your hate. So now that I've made my case, what is your verdict, Your Honor? You, watching this video, remember, you are the judge in this court case. Only you can make the final judgment call. What will you judge Twilight Sparkle in G5 for? Guilty of being evil, like the fandom says? Or innocent, and actually being a hero, like the show resembles her being? The evidence doesn't lie, and as we've seen, all the evidence points to Twilight not being guilty at all of being evil. So then, what do you say, Judge, about Twilight? Guilty or innocent? You decide. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope this video made you view Twilight in G5 differently, and appreciate her character more, and how faithful she was to her character in G4. Now, there's a lot more I want to say about why G5 is good, and I can spend literal hours talking about all of its deep layers, and why it doesn't have wasted potential, unlike what people say. So I know you might have many concerns and questions and comments on why you think G5 is still bad, but I will uncover all of this and why G5 is good within my next videos, over the next 2 or 3 years, possibly longer depending on how long these videos will take to make. But if you give me enough time to make this series, I will show you just how amazing G5 really is, because it is good, and it needs to be defended. And even though I love G5 and want to defend it with all my heart, the number one thing in my life is my relationship with Jesus. Jesus satisfies more than anything else in this world can. My relationship with him is the only thing that will last, the only thing that really matters. And even though I love G5, Jesus will always satisfy more than anything else in this world, because his love is that deep. So if you long for something that is lasting and will give you life meaning and fulfillment, you can always turn to Jesus. But anyways, now that my video on Twilight is done, the next big project of mine will be a full video uncovering the deep lesson of digital detox from a biblical perspective, but also from looking at all of the deep layers of the lesson as well, going into real-world studies and how technology and social media has negatively affected us. And after that, then we'll get into the Opaline video, and then we will very slowly be going through the rest of the videos on this list as well over the next few years. But I will also do a bunch of shorter videos in between these bigger videos as well. So we probably won't be getting to the Opaline video for a while then. So if you want to see more content on why G5 is actually good, you can watch my biblical analysis video series on G5, where I go through all the deep layers and deep lessons that are in G5. Or you can also watch more G5 videos from YouTubers like Wing, who passionately defends G5, which by the way, was the main inspiration for me for starting this video series on defending G5 myself. But anyways, thank you for watching. I'm Ultrasonic Rainboom, and I'll see you all next time. We'll do our part, hearth to heart.